Pricing lawn care and landscaping can be as difficult or as easy as you want to make it. So there's a few simple methods and a few not so simple methods, but there's just different criteria that most guys will pick up starting off and continue on through years of their business, or they will slowly change and adapt as their business grows, and depending on where they want to go with it and what they want to do and the type of services they offer. That will all change and vary, but everybody pretty much starts off with the same basic idea for different things, and what you decide to do with that is up to you. Now, I'm going to keep this as simple as I possibly can, but there's one thing you got to remember first and foremost is you're never going to get it right every time, and you're never going to get it right off the bat. Bidding and estimating jobs, no matter what field it's in, it's kind of like having good credit, okay? You have to have credit to get credit. Some of you may be too young and may not understand what I mean by that, but credit card companies won't start offering you credit cards until you already have some credit established, because then they know you have an idea of what you're doing and how it works, so then they offer you more credit. And they offer you it in the form of credit cards and things like that. Same thing with usually trying to get a car loan. If you don't already have some credit established, they're not going to give you more credit in the form of a loan. Pricing and bidding lawn care and landscaping, or any field for that matter, you can't just jump right into it without a clue on what you're doing, and you have to have some experience to it. Well, the problem with that is most guys starting off, like myself when I started off, and millions of others, don't have a clue where to start or what to do. So there are a few basic principles to get yourself started off, to get yourself headed in the right direction, and hopefully in that aspect you won't lose so much money right off the bat. You're always going to lose money starting off. You're always going to bid some jobs wrong, and you just have to eat that. Learn from it, and then adapt and change your bidding and pricing process from there. What I'm going to hopefully do in this video is give you some general guidelines that most landscapers, lawn care professionals use throughout their business when it comes to pricing and bidding. And like I mentioned, some of them keep this throughout their career, and some of them change and adapt depending on the services they offer and the things they want to do and how much money they feel they should be making or would want to make. Now let's start off with the simplest thing in the area that most people will start off with anyway, which is basic lawn care. Regular lawn service, mowing, weed whacking, edging, blowing, gone. Okay. A general rule of thumb that most people use, and it can be different in every area, you know, markets are different in every area, and pricing changes depending on the amount of competition you have in those areas. And what other people are pricing. Now, a lot of videos will say you have to know the market in your area, you have to know the pricing in your area, and that is a very big thing. However, starting off, you're not going to know what it is in your area. A general rule of thumb that I have used myself starting off, and I still use to some extent, not nearly as much as I did when I started off, and that a lot of other guys use all over the world that I've talked to, is a general rule of thumb is roughly $1 per minute per man. Now, some guys are charging $1.25 a minute per man, or $1.50 per minute per man, and some I'm sure go higher than that. But roughly, if it's going to take you 30 minutes to mow that lawn, that includes, and that should start from the minute you pull up to when you get back in your truck and you're ready to leave, okay? So pulling up to that lawn, unloading everything, weed whacking, edging, mowing, blowing off, back in the truck. If that lawn takes you 30 minutes, for example, and you're solo by yourself, roughly a good rule of thumb is $30 for that lawn, because you're charging $1 per minute per man. Now, if there's two of you there, if you have a helper or employee, whatever, and there's two of you there and you're out in 30 minutes, that's a $60 lawn, just as a general rule of thumb. Now, how do you know how long that yard is going to take you? You don't. And starting off, you're probably not really going to have a clue. Now, if you have experience going into this, like for instance, if you've worked for other companies, then you can pull up to a lawn and just by your past experience know roughly, okay, I can bang that lawn out in this amount of time. but generally you don't know, and this is where that part comes into play, where I said you kind of have to have credit to get credit. You need to have the experience to know how long it's going to take you to do that, so you know roughly where to price it. Now that also comes into play with how I said you're going to lose some money, because you may look at a lot and say, okay, I can knock that out in 20 minutes by myself, and it ends up taking you 30-35 minutes. So now you've just lost some money, but that's a stepping stone where you're going to learn. A general rule of thumb is, you know, compare it to your own personal yard. Now, you know what equipment you have. Look at your yard and the size of your yard and time yourself. You know, don't rush, just do it at a steady pace, because when the heat of summer comes into play, you're going to slow down a little bit. You know, it's just common sense that people aren't going to work as fast when it's 100 degrees out with 100% humidity. You're going to slow down a little bit. So keep that into account as well. Time yourself. Set a timer. Start off whatever way you like to do it. I usually like to trim out a property first, then edge it, then mow it, then blow it off. That's generally how I do it. But whatever way that you do it, set a timer up and go through it. Go through your whole lawn, do everything you need to do, hit that stopwatch. Now you know roughly how long it takes you to do a property that size. So when you go to bid a property, is it smaller than your yard or bigger than your yard? And then adjust accordingly. Now some guys like to measure things out. They prefer to measure out an exact size of a property and price it in that manner. Now, there's different ways you can do that. For instance, a wheel. This is just a cheap one. It has a little push button on there. I don't know if I can get you guys zoomed in on that. It has a push button on there to reset, and it unscrews, and then you walk along, walk the perimeter of the property rolling this wheel, and it'll count and it'll tell you how many feet you have. Then you can do the math, figure out the square footage of that property, and go that route. Now the only problem with that route is you need to already have some type of pricing set into place, whereas if you mow a 10,000 square foot property, this is what I normally charge for a 10,000 square foot property. Now that's where the problem comes in, because you don't have that experience, so you don't know what you would normally charge for a property that exact size. Some guys do it and they go along flower beds, sidewalks, things of that manner, and they've timed themselves in the past with a trimmer going along those edges, and they can figure out in that manner how many feet per minute or how many feet per second you're moving along with that trimmer. Now that's another great method, but it's a lot more complicated, and at the same time, again, you have to take into account, whereas spring you're going to be moving faster than July and August, the heat of summer, and then you may be moving a little bit slower come fall. So there's a lot more with that, and it's a lot more complicated, but yet it is another way of doing it and another method of figuring out what your pricing is going to be. When it comes to landscaping, there are a lot of different things that can change what you're doing and where your pricing should be. And in that whole theory, that whole idea, you need to roughly have an hourly rate, what your hourly rate would be. Now you don't have to have that, but that's what a lot of guys use, and that helps them out. Some guys are around 60 an hour is what they want to be making no matter what they're doing. Some guys are at 100. You know, there could be guys above that or way below that, but either way, an hourly rate of what you think you need to be making definitely comes into play when you're doing landscaping and not just lawn care. Now when I started off, what I did, my hourly rate, what I wanted it to be, I just took the same theory as from mowing and figured $1 per minute per man, or 60 minutes in an hour. I want to make $60 an hour, and that's what I based a lot of stuff off of. Now that is just the bottom line of it, because now you have materials 90% of the time when you're doing landscaping, unless it's just a cleanup, a spring cleanup, a fall cleanup, which some people consider part of landscaping, some don't. But if you're doing landscaping and you're using materials, that's where things change. So let's just say that you have a basic flower bed excuse me, that you need to clean out, and then you need to trim some bushes and then put down some mulch. Now, a big important thing is, who is your supplier? You need to be calling whatever supplier you're going to use to get that mulch from. Bagged mulch makes a I don't know, it changes depending on where you go. There's often deals at Home Depot, Lowe's, things like that. I don't use bag mulch because it's typically a lot bigger, thicker chunks, and it doesn't spread nearly as far. So you don't get as much material, excuse me, you don't get as much material or as much coverage for your money. So it's always a better idea, in my opinion, to go with bulk mulch. Now you need to call whatever suppliers in your area and find out how much that mulch costs you. Normally contractors, if you put your DBA or your business license on file with them, they will give you a contractor rate versus what everybody else pays. Now in my area, generally for triple cut black mulch, which is what 90% of everybody uses, I can usually get that mulch for about $32 a yard. Okay, now I'm just throwing numbers out here. This is just basic numbers. Your rates, you know, guys that have experience might be watching this and your rates could be way higher, way lower, in between. This is just a general idea for the basic guy starting off. Now let's say that your mulch is $30 per yard. That's what you're getting it for, okay, from your supplier. Now your basic flower bed has, you're thinking it's going to take about 5 yards of mulch to complete that job. So $32 times 5 yards is $160, okay? Now, what a lot of guys do right off the bat from there is they will take that $32 per yard times 5 yards is $160. That's their material cost. And all they do to figure out the price for that job is they double it. So that 160 times 2 leaves you at $320. And a lot of guys will do the job for that amount. Just a basic idea. But you also have to take into account that you have some bushes to trim there. Now, pricing ranges, again, all across the board, depending on where you're at, what you're willing to do it for. But we'll just say as a general rule of thumb, small bushes to trim, you're charging $10 per bush. Okay, mediums, we'll say, I don't know, 15 per bush, and large, we'll say 20 per bush, unless it's like a monster bush or a bush that almost looks like a tree. Then of course you want to adjust your price accordingly. And also, how overgrown is it? Because you have to rake all that up, you have to blow out the flower bed, and you have to haul that away. So we'll just say, for example, you're doing small bushes, okay, at $10 a bush, and we'll say there's 10 of them there. So you have to trim 10 small bushes at $10 per, and that's another $100. Okay, so now your total is up to $420. 420. You stoners will love that. Okay, but that's $420 for that job. You still have to take into account, are you going to have employees there? Because you need to charge additional rate to pay that employee. But we'll leave that aside for now, because this is just basic information, getting a solo guy starting a new company off on somewhat of the right foot. Okay, this is just to give you a general idea on which way to go with it and what to do. So if you take that mulch per yard, get your total, that'll cover your material cost. On top of that, you're going to double it. So now you gave yourself $160 so far for doing this work. But you also added in the bushes and brought you up to $420. So now you're giving yourself, I'm not too good at math at all, but now you're giving yourself roughly $200 to do this job. If the job takes you 5 hours to do, then you are sitting at about $40 an hour. Okay, is that where you want to be? Some guys say yes, some guys say no. If you are a solo guy and you don't have any overhead, you don't have employees, you know, you don't have all these high-end insurances, you know, I always recommend having basic insurance for your company. Even just starting off, it's pretty cheap, and depending on your area, again, that changes. But if you don't have any of the overhead and you're just there and you're doing it by yourself, $40 an hour isn't a bad price. But if you want to be up at that $60 an hour that we talked about, then all you do is you figure out the difference and add that on your total, and that will put you at your $60 an hour. And if you're happy with that, then there you go, and there's your job, and you're good to go. That's just a basic rule of thumb for landscaping, and that's, like I said, cleaning out a flower bed, trimming some bushes, and then throwing down some mulch. Now, there are a lot of other things that will change drastically depending on what you're doing. If you're doing rock walls, if you're doing, all kinds of other extreme stuff. But just starting off, I'm going to guess you're not doing that, which you shouldn't be, in my opinion, if you are just starting off. So this is just a general rule of thumb for basic landscaping or doing a basic landscaping job. Some ideas on pricing and where you should be. Some guys take that total amount after the mulch, figure out what the cost of mulch is, double that, and then some guys even double that. So that would put you at $640 for the job. And some guys would be willing to do it for that. Now, are you always going to get a customer to pay that? Not necessarily. But if that's where you want to be and you're not comfortable at this price, but you're more comfortable there, then you may want to try that price. Give that price to your customer and see what happens. Now, like I mentioned, a lot of things can change that, and it could be even small things, like some guys add in a haul away fee. How much material, if you're hauling a lot of material out of there, if you've got to rake a lot of stuff out of that flower bed, or there's a lot of material from trimming those bushes, are you going to tag on a haul away fee? And that can range. Some guys will charge 20 bucks for it, some guys will charge 50. And a small thing in determining that is, where are you going to dump? Can you dump for free? If there's a charge for where you're dumping, that fee should be added in. That way you're not out that money and you're not pulling that dumping fee out of your profits from that job. So you need to figure that in as well and take that into account when you go and bid this job. Now, like I mentioned, these are just basic ideas, just basic starting points to get you started off in the right direction, so hopefully you won't lose too much money going into this your first year. And again, this video is geared more toward the guy that's just starting off and doesn't have the experience in doing this, which I will repeat again. The biggest piece of advice I can give you for basic lawn care is time your own lawn and then price accordingly from there. Is the lawn you're bidding smaller than yours, or is it bigger than yours? One of the biggest things you need to keep in account is the amount of trimming. Now, I know what my mowers can do. I know how fast I can work with my mowers, and I know roughly what they're capable of. So the biggest determining factor usually for me when I'm bidding a new lawn is how much trimming is there. I don't generally use these principles I've just given you anymore, because I've been doing this so long that I can pull up to a lawn, I can walk that lawn, look at it, and I know roughly how long it's going to take me right off the bat, and I price it accordingly to that. That being said, I do have some lawns, I'll give you one for an example, that I charge $50 a week to cut this lawn. Now, I know in the spring when grass is growing out of control, it's growing like crazy, sometimes I'm there for an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. And at that $50 for that lawn, if I'm going to the dollar per minute per man being a solo guy, I know I'm losing $10 to $20 every time I cut it. But again, that lawn with that growth lasts about a month and a half starting off the season. Now, going into the summer, half the time there's not nearly as much trimming, the grass isn't growing as much, I'm in now there faster, so then for most of the season I'm in now that lawn in 30 minutes. So now I'm $20 ahead of where I want to be, and I'm making a lot more money. So it makes up for it, and I'm actually coming out ahead. So those are other things you need to keep into account when you're bidding these lawns. So hopefully some of this has helped you out and given you a general idea on where to start off and how to start off. Like I said, and I can't say this enough because I know the comments are going to flow down below, and people are going to say, you're charging way too little or you're charging way too much. These are not my prices. This is just giving you a rough idea with basic numbers for simple math so that you can figure out the process of it and how to implement this into your business. If you guys like this video, if you want to see more videos like this, I know this video is going to be, not so popular with a lot of guys because they're going to be angry that I'm giving this information out. But, like I mentioned before, you should be concerned with what you're doing, and your biggest competition is yourself. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Don't care about what other people are doing. these are basic methods to get you started off your first year, and then as you get the experience and as you figure out how long things take you and how quick you can get through a job, then that in itself is going to help you to adjust your pricing accordingly. Maybe you need to be a little bit lower, maybe you need to be higher. That being said, knowing the pricing in your area, the market in your area, should just give you a general rule of thumb. You have to remember, the guy down the road that has been in this business for 10, 15 years and is running 7, 8, 10 trucks a day is going to go in and bid a job a lot higher than you because they have the overhead that you don't have. They have a lot of money they have to pay out, and they need to have their prices up there. And at the same time, they've been around a long time, people have seen their work, they know what they do, and people are willing to pay for that. You're a new guy starting off, nobody's ever heard of you, nobody's ever seen your work, and they're going to be hard pressed to pay that premium. So just because the guy down the road is doing it doesn't mean that you can, as far as pricing. I've heard a lot of guys say over the years, well, man, these guys are getting this much money to do this job and that's what I should be doing. Well, they have the reputation. People have seen their work, like I said, and they also have the high overhead, so that's why they're pricing that. But just because your price is lower doesn't mean you can't take an account that you're making money off of that. You need to remember that, you know, your pricing is going to be based on knowing your numbers, and I've said that a million times in videos. And as far as knowing your numbers, that means what is your overhead, what are you paying out, what's your insurance cost, what's your fuel cost in your truck, your equipment, what are your bills, your gas bill, your electric bill, your cable bill, your car insurance or your truck insurance. That's knowing your numbers, knowing what you put out every month at the end of the month, because a lot of people have asked me that, you know, I say in my videos you have to know your numbers, and that's one of the, that is probably the biggest determining factor when I bid any job, is because I know my numbers. And I've said it before, I don't care what the guy's charging down the road, I don't care what the guy charged for that property that I'm bidding. Whoever did it last year, I don't care what they charge. I don't care if it was higher than me or lower than me, because I know my numbers. And knowing your numbers is knowing what you put out every month. What does it cost for you to get by every month? And you know that that's what you need to make. Now, are you going to make all that on one job? No, you're definitely not, and you shouldn't be trying to, because that's just going to put you out of business. You're going to build a reputation for yourself real quick that, wow, this guy is way overpriced. This guy is, you know, out of control with his pricing, and no matter how good a work you do, people aren't going to call you because they're not going to want to pay that premium. So take that into account, and if there's other categories that you guys want to hear me discuss or other things you want me to make videos about, put it in the comments down below. Yesterday's video, I got a lot of comments, a lot of feedback. Some of them are videos I can't even make till spring because they just require me to do different things I can't do right now. But in general, ideas about business, things like that. I will be making a video on marketing, and I can't guarantee when that one's going to come out. It may even be tomorrow, who knows. But, you know, let me know what you guys think down below, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this. But, you know, consider subscribing, hitting that button below, and hit the thumbs up if you like this video. Hit the thumbs down if you don't like it. You know, either way, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.